In version 1.4 and 1.5 of the Sandbox software, I changed the projector calibration utility to make it more reliable, more robust. And this is the slightly changed calibration procedure. So I start by running the Calibrate Projector utility. And the first thing it will do is turn the projector red. And this indicates that the software is capturing the sand surface in order to then remove foreground objects like my hand here, or of course the calibration target. It needs to do that so that it can reliably identify the targets in order to measure their position. So what I have to do now is I have to place the calibration target, which is just a circle. I used a CD, glued a piece of paper to it, put a cross right through the middle so I can line it up with the crosshairs, which are now displayed here on the screen. But before I do that, I need to create a capture tool. So I bring the mouse into the display, and I press and hold the 1 key. You can pick any key you want, but let's go with 1 for now. And then from the menu, I just move the mouse down to select capture. I don't press any mouse buttons, I just hold on to the 1 key, and then once I have capture, let go of the 1 key. This binds the capture function to the 1 key, and now there's a dialog box asking me to press the button to assign to function capture background. And for that, I'm going to press and release, just tap essentially the 2 key. Okay, so now that dialog box goes away, and 1 is now bound to type 1 capture, and 2 is bound to recapturing the background. I'll explain why that is important in a moment. So now what I'll do is, by default, the software will go through 12 type point positions indicated by the white crosshairs, and I have to place the calibration target at each of these positions so that the crosshairs that are projected by the projector line up exactly with the crosshairs I drew onto the disk, which again go right through the center. That's really important. They have to go precisely through the center. Now there's a bunch of ways of doing this. For example, I can use a spacer object like this one and just put it in, put the little disk on top, make sure that they line up. And then what happens is that if the Sandbox software detects the target, it will show the target as a green blob all the way over there. The fact that it shows it over here as opposed to here is, of course, we haven't done calibration yet, so the projector doesn't know yet how to align itself. Doesn't matter where it shows up, you just want to make sure that what does show up is a circle, is solid, doesn't jitter around too much. And also that it's green, very important. You notice my hand is showing up in yellow because it is detected as a foreground blob, but not as the disk. So if the disk shows up in yellow, then you have a problem, like here, because now the disk is detected as part of my hand, so the computer says it's not a disk. If I take my finger away, it's going to turn green. All right, once it's green and the crosshairs line up precisely, I just press very quickly the 1 key, and then the computer takes 2 seconds to capture the target, during which time I must not put my hands in here, must not move the target, must essentially step away from the sandbox, press the button, and it will capture the target, and then go on to the next type point. So here, I want to now do this alternatingly. I want to maybe capture 1 type point that's a bit above the sandbox, 1 type point that's fairly low down, so I can use a smaller spacer, or with a new version, I can actually just hold the target in my hand. I just unbend a paper clip and glued it on there so I can hold the disk a little bit at a distance, and then I can just freehand it, can hold it in here, try not to shake too much, line it up nicely, make sure that the disk is green, press the button, and it's going to go to the next type point. So this works for, it's a little bit more precise if you put down a stationary object because you don't get any hand shaking, but turns out that even if you do it freehand, it's much quicker, of course, and it works reasonably well. So now one thing that is a good thing to do is to also get some type points from below the sand surface, because you want to bracket the surface on which you're displaying your topography map. So here, let's say I want to get a below sand type point from this crosshair location. I'm just going to take my shovel and dig a hole and just toss the sand over here and make a big hole. And you notice, of course, what's happening. Now the system is detecting all that sand I dug out here as foreground objects, and I need to make sure that doesn't happen. And also, if I now take the target and move it into the hole, the target will not be detected because it's going to be below the old sand surface. So you see it doesn't even show up at all. If I hold it up here, it's going to be green. I drop it down, it's invisible because there was sand here before. So in order to do this, this is where the Recapture background button comes in. I'm pressing 2 now, and you'll see the box will turn red again for 2 seconds. This is where the computer captures a new background, and now everything is fine again. If I hold the disk now very deep into the sand here, you'll see it shows up as a nice green box below the sand surface, so I can capture the type point and move on to the next one. I could leave the hole now, but because I'm a tidy person, I'm going to fill it back in, which of course will now detect the former hole as a foreground object. So we just have to recapture the background to get rid of that again. You notice here now how the former hole is now detected in green, which of course is very bad news. You don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and recapture the background by pressing 2 again to get ready for the next calibration type point. All right, so I had a high one, a low one, a very low one. Let's do another low one. Just holding it in here. Make sure that the disk is nice and green and solid. Press the button, and we're moving on to the next point. Let's get another low one. Press the line up, press the button. Let's get a high one. Who's going to freehand it for the rest of the time? Just try to hold your hand as still as humanly possible. It's ideal if you can rest your hand on something, but you know, let's just see how far we can go with just freehanding it. You might want to hold your breath while you're doing that. Okay, almost done. 4 more type points. Another thing I should mention is while you're doing this, try to hold the disk as orthogonal as possible to the Kinect. So you can hold it like that, but you shouldn't. Try to line it up so that it's exactly facing the Kinect camera. It will just make it easier to get. Now what do I need? High or low? I forgot. It doesn't matter. It makes it easier to get precise calibration. Okay, one high one. I'm going to go real high this time, and a low one, and this is the last one. And so we're done with the first round. I can capture more type points. I can just start over from the beginning if I feel I need more. But if I have the first round of type points, and this is a bit hard to see on the camera, the system will now track the target in real time and will draw red crosshairs, which you can see running this way and that way. And if the calibration works, those red crosshairs should always the intersection of them should always go exactly through the center point of the disk, which it does here very, very nicely. So this calibration is done. I don't even have to capture more type points. Freehanding it definitely created a very good calibration all the way to the edges of the box. This is really what you're going for. I'm off by, if I go to the very edges of the box, I'm off by maybe 1 millimeter, but everywhere on the inside I'm off by less than 1 millimeter, and that is really what you want to see. Perfect. So that was calibration. We are done at this point. Now I can just, the program, the moment it has the first round of type points, it already saves out the projector calibration matrix. So now I can just exit this program and start the sandbox proper. And it should immediately come up with a very nice calibration, and indeed it does. So if I now just dig around a little bit, you notice how the contour lines, let me get the mouse cursor away, how the contour lines follow what I'm doing exactly. I can now make a tiny little hole, let's say right here, and you can see that we have a contour line that goes exactly around that hole. If I make a little mountain there, it just works out spectacularly. Again, the global calibration is now by about less than 1 millimeter off, which is really very, very good. That's the kind of precision you're aiming for. Okay, that's it with the new calibration procedure. It's basically the same as before. The difference being that the calibration tool takes 2 buttons now. One is to capture a type point, one is to recapture the background, so you can change the sand surface in the middle of calibration, which you couldn't do before. And the other one is that now you get real-time feedback of your calibration by seeing the actual blobs that are extracted from the Kinect image, so you can very clearly see whether you have a good capture of your type point or not, and can then correct for it. All right.